And we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. And for the fourth part of the show, we are now going to talk about the Giants, the New York Football Giants, signing Jameis Winston. And I am very happy about this move. Now, it's funny because on Friday, I was working, and my friend's also a Giant fan. We were kind of going back and forth, talking about the Giants, what they're gonna do, and I did bring up Jameis Winston and said, hey, look, I would love for them to sign him, just to get him. And like for a while, you never heard that Jameis Winston was connected to the Giants. It was Rodgers, it was Russell Wilson. Well, before that, it was Matthew Stafford. The Giants were in on Matthew Stafford trying to acquire him. But then, you heard Rodgers, you heard Russell Wilson, and then you even heard Joe Flacco. And you even heard, I think, even Carson Wentz, too. Which, yeah, no. But, well, you could even say the same thing about Jameis. But anyways, yeah, so we heard nothing about Jameis Winston. I said, why don't we get Jameis Winston? Why don't they sign Jameis Winston? And then all of a sudden, the Giants bring him in for a visit. And I was like, okay. And then, while I'm working, my friend texts me Jameis in all caps. And I said, no way. Did they sign him? And I go to my phone, and sure enough, the Giants ended up signing Jameis Winston. And the only quarterback that they have on the roster, other than Jameis Winston, is Tommy DeVito, Tommy Cutlets. So they bring in Jameis, and the specifics of the contract. So he signs, it's an interesting contract. Because I didn't think about this initially, and then, of course, I started watching, the Giants YouTubers that I do watch, the Giant content creators. They signed him to a 2-year, $8 million contract that could be upwards to $16 million because of incentives. So when you look at that contract, you say to yourself, that's backup quarterback money. And because if you remember last year, I mean, they signed Drew Lock to I don't even remember. It was not that much either. It was like four or $5 million. Um. So yeah, this does not mean that we're going to go into the season and Jameis Winston is going to be the starting quarterback for the Giants. This could mean that Jameis Winston he's brought in to be a backup, which I'd be okay with. So when I was watching, the content creators that I watch for the Giants, there's several different things that could happen. And it all depends on what the Browns could do, essentially. Because you look at the draft, it seems like the Titans, they could be set on taking Cam Ward. All right, so he's out. He's out of the equation. But now you got the Cleveland Browns. What are the Browns going to do? Now, we're going to talk about them in the next segment, but the Browns, they could draft a quarterback with the second pick. Now, if that's the case, the Giants, they could say to themselves, all right, well, if nobody signs Russell Wilson, and let's just say maybe Aaron Rodgers doesn't go to the Steelers, then maybe they get one of those guys. And then you have a platoon, I guess. I mean, you probably have more platoon with Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, but you could have a quarterback room of Aaron Rodgers, Jameis Winston, Tommy Cutlets, or you could have Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and Tommy Cutlets. So there's that scenario. But you could also have, now that I think about it, even if the Browns don't take a quarterback, now, or they don't sign, I mean, maybe they don't sign Russell Wilson. Maybe they sign Carson Wentz because there was some, I think there's mutual interest between Carson Wentz and the Browns. I don't know. I definitely saw something like that. But again, you don't know how true all that is. So let's say they bring in Carson Wentz and Russ is still out there. Then all of a sudden, maybe the Giants could say, all right, we're going to sign Russ. We got Jameis. Now we're going to even take a quarterback. We're going to take a quarterback with our third pick. So then you're going to have Russell Wilson, Jameis, and Shedeur Sanders. And then I don't know. I guess Tommy Cutlets goes to the practice squad. I don't know. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's either going to be you sign Russ, you have Russ and Jameis, don't take a quarterback, and maybe you hope that next year, you somehow could work something out where, you could win games and then you could take a young quarterback in next year's draft. Or Russ gets signed by the Browns, and the Browns take Abdul Carter, let's say, and then the Giants take Shedeur Sanders, and then you have Jameis start the year, and then Shedeur Sanders comes in later in the year. The problem is, though, so the Giants, well, first of all, the Giants could do really whatever right now, because now you have a legit backup quarterback on your roster. I mean, Drew Lock, obviously they won the game against the Colts, but Jameis could start for you, for several games, but not over the course of. I agree with what people are saying. He's not a guy that's going to start 17 games for your team. He's not. So you could bring him in. He's going to start several games for you, and then you could switch over to the rookie. So the Giants could do a lot of different things with the quarterback situation. But the good thing is they have a legit quarterback on the roster. Now, you could say Tommy Cutlets is a legit quarterback. I would disagree with you. Tommy Cutlets is also a backup, but that magic, kind of faded last year. He was not good when he played. Now, you could also say because the Giants also were horrendous. But Giants also weren't good in 2023, and he was okay. He was able to win games. So, but the thing is, though, with that being said, like the Giants, they're not going to win a lot of games next year. So even if they, do everything right, they get the young quarterback right. If they don't win a lot of games, Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen are gone. And then it's like, well, what happens now? You bring in a new coaching staff with this quarterback that they've inherited. So it's a lot. There's a lot of pressure on Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, and I think Joe Schoen has done well in the offseason with the moves that the Giants have made. He's signed a lot of depth guys. On the offensive line, on the defensive line, with the receivers. They signed a couple of receivers. They signed Zach Pascal and Lil Jordan Humphrey. And that could mean that Jalen Hyatt is not going to be on the Giants next year. But, and then they signed, Adenabo and Javon Holland for the secondary. So, the defense on paper, I think, is going to be good. It looks like it's going to be good. But we said the same thing last year. But, if the secondary's good, and they give these pass rushers time to get after the quarterback. And you got other young players in the secondary that you pair up Holland and Adenabo with. So, Giants on paper have a good defense. And they showed you at times last year that they could be a solid unit. It's just the offense for years has just been so putrid. And hopefully with Jameis and, whatever else they decide to do, the offense is competent. They can win some games. And I'm hoping that they do well enough where Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen keep their jobs and they really can continue to build this team. Now, some people will disagree with that. I get it. But you don't want to keep going through this, lather, rinse, and repeat, where you're bringing in a new regime and then they're out in a couple of years. The Giants need stability. And maybe with their backs against the wall, these two guys are really going to bring it next year. It's going to be hard to because the schedule is nearly impossible because you play 6 games against your own division. Every team is better than you in the division. You play against I think they play against the NFC West next year. It's either the NFC West or the NFC North. Then you play the AFC West. So you're playing against Pete Carroll, Sean Payton, Andy Reid, and Jim Harbaugh. So have fun with that. It's not an easy schedule. There's not a lot of wins on the schedule. But maybe they surprise Giant fans. Maybe Russ comes in, throws some moon balls to Malik Neighbors. Jameis comes in, he throws for 500 yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 picks. Giants win in the shootout against Dallas. Maybe Jameis comes in, plays against the Eagles, and the Giants win their first game in Philly since I was in middle school. It's not happening. It's not happening. Actually, you know what's interesting? I kind of foreshadowed Jameis going to the Giants because he was my quarterback for a little bit in Ultimate Team. I had a 90 overall Jameis in Ultimate Team, and the uniform I use for my Ultimate Team is the Giants. So, yeah, and maybe I'm foreshadowing Josh Allen because, now Josh Allen's my starting quarterback. But, yeah, no, when it comes to Jameis, though, you know what you're getting out of him. We really haven't talked about Jameis, honestly. But we know what we're getting out of Jameis. All right? He's going to throw for a ton of yards in certain games, but he's also the turnovers. But you know what? Giant fans, for them, it gives them excitement. Like, we could see Jameis and Malik Neighbors having this strong connection. Malik Neighbors could put up big numbers. I mean, look at the game that we'll talk about in the next segment. I mean, Jameis to Jerry Jeudy. I mean, I know Jameis threw a couple of pick sixes. He almost threw 3. But Jameis threw for almost 500 yards. Jerry Jeudy, I think, had over 200 yards receiving in the game. I'll have to go back and look. But he had a huge game against his former team. You could get that in some games with Jameis. But, yeah, it does come with the bad. He could throw a lot of interceptions. He could fumble the football. But you know what? He's a motivator. He's going to be great for the locker room. And it's also funny because you go back to, media day with the Super Bowl, and Jameis was there, and he was interviewing players, and he was saying to Saquon, I'm a free agent. Do you have a place in mind that I could sign with? And Saquon said, I heard New York needs a quarterback. And he clarified because Jameis was like, which team? And he said the Giants. And he was like, thank you. And now here we are. A month later, and Jameis is a quarterback on the Giants. How about that? So I'm happy about it. I like this move. I think the deal is very team friendly. And again, Giants have another quarterback that they're trying to add, whether it's through the draft or free agency. But we got to see. Russell Wilson's waiting on Aaron Rodgers. I mean, Russ I think is going to end up either in Cleveland or with the Giants. Rodgers I think is going to the Steelers. That's the way it looks right now. And then, we'll see what happens in the draft. Titans are probably taking a quarterback, and, what are the Browns going to do? Maybe the Browns sign a quarterback that we don't see coming, Carson Wentz, Maybe they bring back Flacco. Who knows? Because they have Kenny Pickett on the roster. So, and Deshaun Watson. So, we'll get into all that in the next segment. But let me know what you guys think, though, about the Giants signing Jameis. You like the move, let me know in the comments. So, we are going to take our final break of the show. When we come back, we will talk about the Browns' 2024 season, how that went, and what they've done in the offseason so far. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.